Hello, everyone, and welcome. Now, this recording isn't necessarily an astrology report, but rather I'm going to share my thoughts, reflections, and of course, some predictions about two very important energies that we are going to be experiencing very soon and for a brief while, even simultaneously. One of them is Jupiter very soon. It is going to change signs, leaving the sign of Taurus and entering the sign of Gemini, where it will stay for the next 1.5 years, let's say roughly. And the other energy is Neptune hanging around that 29 degree of Pisces, where in July it will retrograde away from this degree, but then it will go direct, reactivating it once again. And then later on in 2025, it will enter the sign of Aries, but then retrograde out from it, reactivating once again the 29 degree of Pisces. And then as it will move direct, but this is already in the domains of 2026, so January 2026, as it re-enters, of course, Aries for good, it will once again activate that 29 degree of Pisces. But of course, it isn't just Neptune himself activating there. On one hand, it will be the transiting north node. When it leaves Aries, it will uh, enter 29 degrees of Pisces. And the other planet is Saturn, where Saturn is also progressing to the 29 degree of Pisces, where it will not exactly meet Neptune there, but it will meet Neptune at the very first degree, 0 or 1 degree of Aries, sorry. That's very, very close to 29 degrees. So this is where the alpha and the omega being the end, 29 degrees of Pisces is actually the end of the zodiac. So with Saturn and Neptune here and the North Node, these following months and even years until that January 2026, this is a massive, massive, massive karmic closure period when a lot of ancient energies have to close, have to get back to spirit, if that makes sense. But in this recording, I am going to give you a certain dates when Neptune is going to activate those degree, but I'm actually speaking about the present. So the 29 degree that we're experiencing right now in the present context, not necessarily the more distant future context like in autumn 2025, because that will be a slightly different energy. So what I'm about to say now is more about the present moment. But first, let's begin with Jupiter, because we are very powerfully going to feel Jupiter's changing signs. And this takes place, this begins, if you look at my screen, we have the 25th of May, when Jupiter enters the sign of when Jupiter leaves the sign of Taurus and enters the sign of Gemini. I'll move it forward to the 26th because there we go. So this is in the sign of Gemini. Now, first of all, let us look at this energy um, from a more general perspective. What does it mean? How, what specifics and in which way, how will it activate both Jupiter but also the sign of Gemini? Now, first of all, we must know that Jupiter doesn't like it all that much in the sign of Gemini. And the reason for this is Gemini is the opposite sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is Jupiter's basically kingdom, the sign that it rules. According to the ancient, it also ruled the sign of Pisces. But even Pisces has its opposite sign, Virgo, and yet another mercurial sign. So Jupiter is going to be in the domain of Mercury because it is Mercury which rules the sign of Gemini. And there is a certain dichotomy between the two energies. There is a certain contradiction. There is a massive difference, even though we can look at this as two sides of the same coin, because it is Gemini Sagittarius axis. But just like Mercury doesn't like to spend time in Sagittarius, why? Because it is further away as possible from home, from Gemini. The same goes for Jupiter. It is as far away as possible from his home sign of Sagittarius. So it is, almost like exiled. It is not very comfortable there. However, it still has certain positive sides and a lot of good that it brings to the table, but it also has downsides. But this is perfectly true in any shape and form. Even when, for example, Jupiter is exalted, after Gemini, it will move into Cancer, a part of the sky where it loves being. But even there, it will have certain not so favorable expressions. But the favorable expressions, because it loves being there, are going to be that much more bountiful, pleasurable, etc., etc. The specifics of Jupiter in Cancer, lucky, so to speak. So in Gemini, anything that Jupiter touches expands. So one of the positive elements here is that it will expand the utility, the usefulness, the good side of Gemini. So that represents, on one hand, anything that has to do with communication, sharing information, speaking, being connected to one another informationally, mentally, by speech or sharing information, even nonverbal communication. I would go as far as even certain expressions of telepathy, especially that special kind of telepathy which exists between siblings, twins, Gemini, and very, very close people. Like, for example, best friends, but lifelong best friends. Those two people are like close brothers by now. So, of course, they know each other's thoughts and they can communicate perfectly many times without any words. They just know the other's way of thinking. That is also very, very much Gemini, very unique and specific to it. Um, so, Jupiter expanding this, well, we can very easily envisage the good that it will do, especially that a lot of people do have communication blockages, do have maybe a certain kind of shyness to them, or it can also represent dyslexic, etc., etc., when the blockages are deeply rooted in the brain or the mind. Now, this Jupiter's expansive power can represent opportunities and new experiences for those people, maybe not necessarily to solve the blockage forever, but to have massive improvements. Gemini is also learning. Gemini is basically energetically, functionally speaking, how our minds on first glance perceive the world around us, our immediate rudimentary perception, that which we analyze, contemplate, philosophize about. So you can see how this energy, the same energy that was perceived by Gemini after a lot of filter and processing, becomes a source of knowledge. It becomes something in the realms of Sagittarius, higher knowledge, philosophy, deeper understanding of, for example, religion, faith, a certain kind of structure and coherence that we give the lower perceptions and the lower mind, because this is the usefulness of the Sagittarian Gemini axis, because it doesn't matter which way the energy flows from Gemini to Sagittarius or vice versa, this still represents integration of information, of knowledge, and ultimately our own worldview is being shaped and formed. Our worldview is a reflection of our deeper faith. And this is how we actually generate our reality, but in thought and understanding, Gemini, Sagittarius axis. So you can imagine how Jupiter expanding our lower perceptions makes it all that much richer, all that much. If Gemini is like the antennas on an insect, so highly specialized organs to pick up a lot of things that we, even though we are much more advanced biological beings, our senses are blind to a lot of things. An insect's antenna and perceptions are not. So Jupiter adds this extra layer of perception, which can be groundbreaking for a lot of, because Gemini, let me give you a, Gemini is a very, very good energy for speculations, but the positive kind of speculations, business speculations, financial speculations, projects, putting stuff together in thought, idea, and the team building, in the sense that which people, players, let's say in a game, are compatible with one another, managing in thought. So Jupiter brings a lot of energy here, expansion, let's do it. People who maybe normally would shy away from a team up, partnership, etc., under this energy, find the courage, usefulness, or whatever they need to form alliances which normally they would shy away from, regardless of what this means. This can mean in an Aquarian sense, where the ally would be a much too extreme type of person to get along with you, so to speak, because the third decan of Gemini is Aquarian decan. So every air sign has the other air signs in it as well. Basically, this goes for every sign, every element of the zodiac. But you get my idea. So, but this can also represent where a person maybe is too similar to us, and that intimidates us, or they're too advanced, or they're too something that we usually would decide not to hold an alliance. But under this energy, if the alliance gets together, imagine the learning that two different elements, or two similar elements even, how they interact with each other. And especially if this is kept in a friendly basis, and Gemini is very much friendly and lighthearted, this is where the other expression will come into play. Then it's a really fun experience. Learning can be fun. Sharing information, communication can be fun. Gemini rules social media, even media, more anything that has to do with media and sharing. May that be newspaper, television, radio, internet, anything like that. So Jupiter expand, there is going to be a lot of activity there. Then of course our sense of humor. When Jupiter transits Gemini, the moon is going to conjunct it monthly. The moon is its most humorous and light-hearted expression in Gemini. So you can imagine that's humor, childishness, but in a good sense. This juvenile adolescent spirit, everything is better with a touch of humor, laughter, not taking things seriously many times can lead to miraculous solutions and turnaround of events. Because if we don't take something maybe even as seriously as we should, that gives way to flow and liberty. Now, there was a story a friend told me that is so symbolic to what I'm actually wanting to say. There was a hurricane in some kind of American state. And if you get caught up in a hurricane, well, usually it's very, very, very bad news because chances to survive it are very low. Something is meant to kind of break your bones, or somehow it ends up in a bad way. A person was exactly that, caught up in a hurricane, but as soon as they got sucked into it, or I'm not sure how to explain this, an object hit their head and they passed out immediately. But having been passed out made their bodies very flexible, no fear reaction, basically a vegetable, but that meant that they were not smashed, basically. Somehow their flexible unconscious bodies survived without any major damage. So their injuries are quite minor. The same way, when something flows, we're caught in it. Jupiter in air sign, hurricane, but we allow the flexibility, Gemini mutable energy. It can lead to something really, really good, really constructive, really unusually positive. So this means innovation. This means ingenuity. Uh, this means figuring stuff out your own unique way. Uh, Let me give you yet another example. Maybe a blasting powder was discovered basically on every kind of continent at the same time. Maybe they didn't explain it the same way, but they used it the same way. You know what I mean? And I'm referring to, it was used in Chinese culture, then European culture. It was used explosives, but the most primordial and primitive ones. And so who discovered it? Well, basically, everyone discovered it their own way. This is Gemini. Sometimes you don't need the Sagittarian highest knowledge, the textbook, the university degree, the grand master, doctor, professor, the highest strengths in academic knowledge possible, the Nobel Prize win. You don't need that knowledge. Why? Because Mercury gifts you from birth, innately, this very correct Virgo energy to if your mind is hell bent to figure something out, it will figure it out. If you do not judge your own analogies and symbolisms and how your mind interprets it, if you see the end result, the understanding, then job's done. You don't need the Sagittarian expression necessarily. Now, Jupiter does this in Gemini, but it hates it. Because what is Jupiter's purpose? Well, it's exactly to elevate everything to Sagittarius, and vice versa, to spread the understanding and knowledge to Sagittarius, to everything, up to the smallest detail, Gemini. But it's not fully possible. You know what I mean? Theory will always look differently than practice. Like, let me give you an example. The Large Hadron Collider. What I said is Gemini. Uh, you imagine like a big machine, right? Well, when we bring it to the level of Sagittarius, well, it's huge. And how it's built, it's so infinitely complex that we simply need to go to university and finish a few, faculties in order to understand it. But the way I transfer this knowledge to you, Gemini, if you strip it from all the Sagittarius, well, everyone can envisage their own unique way, a big reactor, a big machinery that is as big as a city. That's it. You know what I mean? Sometimes in life, we don't need the Sagittarius. Sometimes we just need the Gemini, and vice versa. Sometimes we cannot pollute Sagittarius with Gemini. Like, let me give you an example. There is the hypnotherapist who kind of worked hard in a Sagittarian way for 10 plus years of sacrifice their life, uni, practice, master degree, PhD to become a highly skilled professional. And there is the alternative where you go 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you get like an imaginary diploma. There you go, son, daughter, you're trained. I'm not saying that these two professionals working at the same time in the world don't help. Pretty much two sides of the same coin. Yet still, how should I say? The Gemini therapist is never gonna be able to solve the most difficult cases that the Sagittarian one is dealing with on a daily basis. You know what I mean? Some people have such a minor problem that the instinctual, self-taught by experience mercurial worker can help them with great ease, because some things are simply rooted in nature. You don't need Sagittarius to figure those out. But the most, unnatural cases, which you just cannot figure out, you need the database. You need the humanities basically database, the academic knowledge to figure it out. Then you need to go to the highly skilled professional, which, you know what I mean? Both are practical, useful, both do the same thing, and both are needed in the world, because the Sagittarian person, the doctor, professor, PhD, you know what I mean, will not be able to help someone with a minor problem. Why? Well, it's a total waste of time. I didn't go to uni and sweated blood and tears to give someone in 10 minutes a friendly word, and that's all they need, really. A lot of other people can do that without any problem. You know what I mean? So both of these energies need to exist in the world. They both have their places. So, but the Jupiter in Gemini expands this, and this is how we get to the more negative expression of this energy. Tumultuousness. This is where if everyone's a specialist, then we need universities and higher education anymore? And this was an ironic question, because of course we do. We need to call, but understand the symbol and cleanse the specialist field from the, and this is where the yet another dark expression, the dark mercurial, the wannabe, the con artist, because that is Loki, the dark side of Mercury is exactly the deception, the one who can pull it off. And not necessarily the Neptunian type of person, because that's an artist. You know that they are a being, a person, or illusion. But with the mercurial con artist, you don't know, because you think it's real. So Jupiter in Gemini will give a strong impulse to all con artists. phone scammers, phishing scammers, impersonation. Gemini co-rules technology with Aquarius. What does that end? What Jupiter does in Gemini now sets the ground for Uranus in 2026 onward, from 2026 onward. So, you know what I mean. We need to see the con and the con artists, the crooks, the thieves, these individuals, their modus operandi, so that we can filter them out. You know what? We have to learn. Jupiter empowers them, but that means they will become overconfident and we will adapt. We as a human collective, we will adapt to their ways. So it's actually doing them a disfavor by empowering them. But this is Gemini, the duality of it. It's chances are Gemini is like some things, two polarities, two borders, the upper limit, the lower limit. Gemini is very useful somewhere at the middle or in a good balance. But Gemini is deadly when it reaches and it operates in the extremes. So this is the other expression of Jupiter. Imagine when the mental sphere receives more energy than it can handle. Overthinking, ADHD, but this is where everyone, social ADHD symbolically in social media, it's not going to be, it's going to be so chaotic that chances are we will have to escape it, which is in a way pretty, also in the bad, there is a good. But then there is news, communication, media. Anaretic Neptune is going to be active for some time while Jupiter works in Gemini. You can imagine the deception, the confusion, the smoke and mirrors. Everything is a lie. But again, Jupiter in Gemini, no problem. The coping to this is that mercurial expression. I'll interpret reality for myself. I don't need to listen to anyone else. I have my own mental sphere. I can make sense and logic of life through my own means, based on my own worldview, life philosophies, and my own faith, religiously to be understood, or just free spiritually. These elements. So Jupiter also does this, but there is a pretty dark side to this, because right now, especially the youth, consumers, and people who were born with technology are going to find this energy very, very anxious. But the type of anxiety where you don't know what's wrong with you, it is not going to be an easy period, because the mind will be overpowered, way too overpowered. And this will give way to the expression mind over matter, but the not so nice parts where, if, for example, Anaretic Neptune, the victim, and everything is doomy and gloomy because I'm in that mood. Jupiter expanding the mental sphere, making it so that much more the bad, the negative self-talk, the everyday chitter chatter of the mind. Now, if someone's mind operates on a positive expression of this energy, for example, the juvenile spirit, well, the harm that can do is you get fired, or you will be not very, very serious. You will have a very childish period of your mind, of your life, where it's all fun and games and you cannot help yourself. This is where it can get you in a lot of trouble, but you also have fun and you also learn the hard way. the Saturnian lessons, the responsibility, and why we must take certain things more seriously, etc., etc. But if the mind is operating on a low level where the universe is wanting to defeat me, everything is against me, I'm not good at anything, everything is doom and gloom, everything is sad, I'm never gonna do this. Jupiter, the planet of hope. The opposite is, hopelessness. That's a deadly game. Don't even go there. Don't allow yourself to go there. Better not take anything seriously. Better just chill out than to get into doom and gloom mode. Because this energy can be quite serious and even deadly for reasons we're gonna find out in just a bit. But all of these expressions are going to be part of Jupiter in the sign of Gemini. Now, more key themes here. Jupiter many times has a lot to do with aviation. Gemini, travel, freedom. Traveling by air is going to become much more accessible to everyone. And I just don't mean airline companies, maybe flying cars, if that makes sense, or transporter drones, but which are quick and easy and safe, and you know what I mean. So there's going to be a lot of improvements in travel, transport, short distance and long distance, even travel alike, because whatever happens in a sign impacts its opposite sign. And Jupiter, Sagittarius is very much about long-term, but we can already see this. Aviation is very much triggered here because aviation is co-ruled by Uranus and Aquarius. So the Boeing company is facing a lot of turmoil, but that also is like an opening to innovation from other companies or whatever, you know what I mean? So this can have a lot of good as well. And, new ways to communicate, further improvements in communication and education, how the information is being dished out, for example. But again, Jupiter is just preparing the ground for Uranus, which will upgrade, revolutionize, and also uproot all of what I'm mentioning now. Everything that has to do with the sign of Gemini. Quite individually speaking, this can spark up a very active period with your siblings, with your neighbors for the coming year and a half. Uh, you might be very more mobile than usual. A lot of people will definitely decide to stop using their cars and start walking more or bicycle or travel, which also allows you to live this in a bodily way, if that makes sense. Because the first 6 signs of the zodiac, so from Aries to Virgo, including, are very personal. Whatever happens there is meant to be experienced in a very personal and even bodily way. The experience is meant to speak to us, and that means hiking, walking, different ways of travel which are fun, give you the experience, and are also alternative and innovative. Gemini needs that. And this energy, as I said, also upgrades education. But how? In which way? Is it the methodology? Is it the rules, the law, the legislation? Jupiter very much responsible for that. But whatever happens in this dual sign of Gemini, well, it's both. Both the divine and the earthly, Castor and Pollux, for example, both dark, light, where the balance is somewhere in the middle, usually. Because Gemini is at its best when it can juggle two polarities so that they are in balance and they complement each other. Gemini is one of the best signs out there which can do this in a very practical way, because Pisces can do this as well, but in spirit. Libra in principle and in justice, but it takes Gemini to do it in a kind of real sense. You know what I mean? So there is that. And last but not least, I know I said I'm not going to go into technicalities, but I do need to mention this. Very soon as Jupiter enters Gemini, so around the 26th, 27th, 28th, it is going to hold a trine with Pluto. Well, do I even need to explain why this is a good thing? Jupiter is the great benefic. Pluto is power. Pluto, when the trine is operational, retrograde in Aquarius, the power of the people, internalized power, the power of the mind, power of communication, power of interhuman connections, power of masses, power of freedom, power of the future, the power of hope. Pluto is basically the power, and then Gemini, fellow air sign with Jupiter in it, the expansive qualities. Aquarius is our higher mind, that which is even beyond the realms of Jupiter, Uranus. It is basically the quantum mind, the seat of where the higher self can actually speak to us. Gemini is the seat of the lower mind, the practical mind, basically, the mind that we use to navigate every single day. From how to, I don't know, navigate in a forest, navigate on the mountains, or navigate in the big city, or navigate in your house at home while cooking. That is basically the practical mind, Gemini. And these two speak in harmony. The power, this is truly mind over matter. But Jupiter says that it has to be benevolent, benevolent thoughts. And that's so much Aquarius. Blessed thoughts, the principles, the dreams, the emotion that animate thoughts to become brilliant, to become innovative, to become as high as it can possibly get to the divine planes. So this is a beautiful, beautiful energy. And at the same time, Jupiter is conjunct Sedna. Sedna freshly retrograde, moved back into the sign of Gemini, ingressed into Gemini. Sedna is expanded by Jupiter. So this is where this might not be a very positive energy at first, because Sedna highlights everything that we need to do, the sacrifice, the work, and us to have the courage to look certain things, to look at things for what they are, the sad and painful truth of where is the, and please understand this symbolically, the devil, the darkness, the problem, where it lies in our mental sphere, how, what it is that we need to do to discipline it. Because if we discipline the hyper self, so to speak, the hyper ego, and make it benevolent, Jupiter, we've done ourselves and the world and the divine and our journeys as souls a massive favor. If we turn our mental sphere to something beneficial, because basically that means it's the seat of Christ as well as the soul. Christ not referring to the being, but rather the energy, the symbolism, the divine expression of mercy and compassion. So, but Sedna, first of all, shows us all the dark that is there, the perversion, the transgression, all the dark side of the mental sphere. But as I said, this may not be pretty, but it's needed. And I would like to wrap this Jupiter in Gemini up with this. Jupiter stays in the sign of Gemini until the 10th of June 2025. So we have this energy until then. Now let's speak about Neptune. Now, first I'm gonna show you the key dates. So right now, as we speak, Neptune is at this anaretic degree of Pisces, the very end of the zodiac, the last degree of the zodiac, the degree of finality. What happens after at 0 degrees of Aries? Because 0 degrees of Aries and 29 degrees of Pisces are pretty much the same thing, aren't they? They're kind of the boundary. Well, Aries is the first breath. Whatever ends in Pisces, we may very well begin in Aries. So, being born from spirit, from a thought, from an energy, we enter into existence. We get genes, Aries, our genome. And our genome is our history, but also all our skills, all our tools. And I'm so sorry to use this analogy, but it's the best. You create a character in a MMO game, let's say. Your character is level 1. It cannot do much, right? However, every skill and everything it might potentially do in the game, it's still there. You just don't have access to it because you have to live, as in gain experience. But the moment you enter the game and your character is just created level 1, but the potential is there with it. You don't have access to it, but potentially everything is there. The same thing when we're being born. It's there. So from Pisces, it becomes Aries, compact. The strands of our genes, the strings, our genome, basically. So Neptune at the 29 degree, at the ending, that's where before something enters existence, let's say, usually it's purified. It's made sure, or ideally it is our job, to make sure that what we desire enters existence and not the rest. Because everything Pisces has more than one side. Let me give you an example. You dream about a partner, right? Let's say you're single and you dream about the partner. And let's say your dream will start enacting itself. The energy is going to be building until a manifestation comes. So let's say that coincides with the sun a year. You're sitting on this desire for a year, let's say. The sun begins its journey through Aries. Aries is when you feel the impulse physically, let's say. I would love a partner. I'm ready, let's say. And then you start dreaming and then you start contemplating. When that sun, let's say, enters 29 degree of Pisces, well, you're making sure that you're not gonna include in your wish, in your dream, in your prayer, Pisces, divine, please get me a partner, let me meet. You're not gonna include the red flags. So you're gonna exclude the narcissistic people and every type of, or everything you would not be able to tolerate in a partner. You know what I mean? So that's the distilling degree, where we truly purge the thought, the energy, the dream, the feeling, the emotion, the manifestation from that which we don't want it to be ever after it enters reality. So it's so important, really. And Neptune is the dream. On one hand, what does this mean? Our connection with Source. But it's, and at this 29 degree, we find out that religion cannot help us. Because religion has limits. There comes a moment in our lives when we have to strip up religion and anything that has to do with doctrine, and where there is just us and the divine, us and the source, us and, let's say, whatever God is to you. Situations in our lives when the only answer is this: asking the divine directly through a prayer, meditation, or a situation in life when nothing can help you. Regardless of where this falls in your personal chart, there can be a situation where only this can help you: a direct connection with the divine source that changes a person forever. And I don't really want to give examples here, but use your imagination. So this anaretic Neptune tells us, seek your answers and your deepest faith in your individual connection with the divine. Why are you here? But don't look for this answer in anything, in any book, an other person's opinion. Strip yourself from the world. You don't know anything. Imagine that you are just born today. You don't know anything. You're just a silly child, let's say, who knows nothing and no one. Yet still, you know, because you can ask the source and it will inspire your mind to make sense of why you're here. It will answer your question as soon as you detach from everything that you know and you reduce yourself into knowing nothing within a meditation, or symbolically speaking. The answers will flow to you in great abundance, like a river, where maybe all that you know is like a big concrete wall stopping the water of knowledge from reaching you. It's total drought. Sometimes you need to demolish the wall of knowledge. Everything that you think you know, Jupiter in Sagittarius, in order for a very deeply personal type of understanding and true faith and knowledge to come to you, where the divine source will simply be your twin. The legend of Gemini. One twin was earthly, the other one was God. And anyway, I don't want to get into details. One is earthly, the other one is divine, and the divine didn't leave the earthly. The divine loved the earthly and vice versa, and they became a constellation because due to their love. There are many variations of this legend, that's why I don't want to get into detail. But this is where sometimes we don't need to know everything to know everything. You know what I mean? Because our divine counterpart, our spirit, our higher self, our holy guardian angel, as they say, that knows what we need to, everything that we need. And it will deliver us that knowledge, but in its own unique, specific way, as long as we're open to it. But the shadow expression of Neptune, you can imagine, the victim. It is where when the shadow, when the inner victim, when the inner jealousy, the dissatisfaction, the why not me, why can't I have the life which I desire, when deep inside you know exactly that the life of you desire is probably an illusionary one, where you're motivated by something that you saw others have or do and be happy with, and it became like the forbidden fruit. Many times our deepest desires, that what we think are deepest desires, are just the result of that. And then this anaretic Neptune drowns us, and it will not subside until it washes that away from us, and we reach our true desires, which are usually the small things in life. And we can be so very, very happy with the small things. But this is perhaps what modern society, this is the biggest lie, that we need all the this and that and that and that to be happy. No, no, no. The opposite is true. Just find happiness in the smallest joys of life, in sunshine, in roses blooming in early May. Just allow yourself to see the beauty and make it you happy. All you need to do is allow. Nature is built to make everything that lives within it also happy. Yes, pain and all of that, yes, but also happy. Nature is dual, as we very well know. So this is where we need to rise above, because if not, anaretic Neptune, if fueled by the inner victim, by that inner demon, which wants us to feel discriminated against, weak, ugly, and not want to be satisfied by everything, by anything that we have, which wants us to be dissatisfied always. If we somehow manage to drown that in the waters of Neptune, well, we just transform ourselves into mermaids, free in the waters of fantasy and dreams. That's when our dreams can actually come to us, when the inner victim drowns. Sedna's story, for example. Sedna, because Sedna also just changed signs recently. So where I want to go with this is, we, under this anaretic Neptune, we must choose what our souls are. The survivor, better rather, sorry, the survivor, the alchemist, the artist. But when I say artist, our lives are the canvas, experiences and emotions, the paint and the brush. We can either depict a very sad picture, or we can rather depict a picture where, even if you don't find the happiness, we can make it into modern art. It can be anything you want it to be, and it's very susceptible to interpretation, and that changes our lives, really. When we change our tone and we change the color we give to our voters, let's say. Because if we are, as I said, if a mermaid is washed over, flooded, it won't really do all that much harm, will it? But if, the butterfly is flooded, it's not gonna be very happy with the flood. So why the symbol of the butterfly? Butterfly. The obsession to escape reality, that's the negative expression of the butterfly. We don't want to stay in it. We just want to fly and fly and fly and be carried by the wind, free forever, no responsibility, no anything. No, we must become the mermaid, because the mermaid is going to be at home when Neptune floods us. Anything that comes is going to be a source of spirit, faith, experience, fantasy, the occult, the supernatural. When anaretic Neptune is going to be very much part of our everyday lives. So, but at the same time, we will see a lot of sadness out there, a lot of victims, a lot of, and I'm so sorry to say this, undoing of the self, self-hurt, self-harm. Because on one hand, this is the most powerful degree of the third decan of Pisces, undoing of the self. On the other hand, Neptune, and then later on, Saturn and the transiting North Node is gonna hang around a really malevolent fixed star named Seat. Let me spell that out for you. Scheat, which is like the siren's call, but in a bad sense, into fatality, into doom and gloom, into doing harm to the self, into wanting to see life and everything in it through a very dark and twisted and hateful lens. But the good side of this is that this star also rules prisons, imprisonment, and confinement. So this can represent, because Neptune dissolves as well, freedom for certain people who were trapped within a situation or even prison, an actual prison, psychiatric ward, or any hospital, freedom of waking up from coma. This can also represent that when Neptune touches zero of Aries for a lot of people, but usually it represents imprisonment, etc., etc., etc. So let us be careful that the siren's call is not gonna take us there into the dark realms of Neptune. But I'm gonna be speak about this as we are gonna start having these energies, and as both Jupiter and Neptune are gonna make key moves. And for a closure, I would just like to mention other dates when this Anaretic Neptune is gonna be active. So on the 3rd of March in 2025, we will again have Anaretic Neptune, Anaretic Pisces Neptune season. Then also at the very end of March, Neptune is gonna retrograde, actually move direct and enter the sign of Aries, ingress into Aries, and this is the 31st of March 2025. Then on the 22nd of October 2025, Neptune is gonna retrograde back to the 29 degree of Pisces. So that's another moment for it to dip into Aries for good from the 25th of January 2026. So this is the period when we are going to have this very strong Anaretic Neptune, but on other dates, there are going to be other planets in the configuration. So for now, this is what we can experience, where we need to choose between either the inner mermaid, so to speak, or the inner victim. We do need to choose between the two. So thank you everyone for listening. I'm so sorry for this long philosophy and thought process. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And until next time, bye for now.